be starting construction on the room. So if you can make sure that anything you want to keep is off your desk and outside of the drawer that is in your desk too. And then also regarding county board candidacy paperwork, if you have not already, we have paperwork in our office or on our website that you can print off. You can circulate nomination papers as of now. County board candidacy paperwork is due back by January 4th at 5 p.m. If you are not running for office, you do need to turn in a notification of non-candidacy, and that is due back by December 24th at 5 p.m. But I urge you strongly to turn it in prior to that, as that is Christmas Eve. We are closed, but I will come in if you do need me to. Okay.
All right, thank you. Also, adding to that, we have the employee appreciation event coming up in February, early February. I believe that's like the 16th. We are seeking donations from the board, as we usually do every year. The suggested donation is $100. Please bring that to the January meeting if you could. There are some people who do offer alternate donations, and we appreciate those as well. We want to make sure that we give you that opportunity as well. So remember, for the January meeting, please bring a donation for our employees and show them how much we appreciate them. All right, as Vice Chairman of the County Board, I hereby call this meeting to order of the Washington County Board of Supervisors for Wednesday, December 8th. We have listed the agenda in the clerk's office. It has been properly posted and also sent to the media. So at this time, please join me for a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, roll call. James Berg. Okay. James Berg is on Zoom. Supervisor Boozy is on Zoom. Brian Galitz is on Zoom. Also, I believe Jody Schulteis should be on Zoom. William Smisek is on his way. So, but as it stands, we do have a quorum. So we are ready to go. First thing, we would like to take a motion on the consent agenda. And I will take Mr. Carol Mary as first and Bob Hartwig as a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Questions? Ms. Conrath, if you could ring in one moment.
I just want to make sure too, I'm following Robert's Rules of Order. Is this where I speak, Brad?
Are you referring to the Ackerman's Grove resolution coming up later this evening? That will be at that time. Yes, and I'll assist you with that if you need me.
Thank you. Okay, then I'm good. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, personal appearances, letters. We have the Economic Development, Washington County, EDWC Annual Update. Who will be representing? Mr. Cheshire. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Normally, we're in front of you at a different time of the year, but I'm all about this time of the year because we can actually take a true look back to the year, give you a sense of what has occurred and what you can look forward to in the new year as well. So we had just met last month with the executive committee, giving our deep dive annual report on the revolving loan fund. So we will not be doing that tonight. There will be a quick overview, but the broader recap of tonight will be focused more generally on activities related to economic development as well as a state of the Washington County economy. So, and then of course be happy to address questions at any time. By the way, feel free to interrupt. We are going to move rather quickly through these slides. I'm assuming that you've had a chance to absorb those and would be happy to address questions. Just let me know. I'll try to look out your way. It is exciting to be here this year for many, many reasons. One, this has been a year of leading the way despite, do I just push the button here to move forward? No, don't do that. What did I just do? There we go. Nope, it's not a touch screen either.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Page down then. Nope, I can't do the page down or no. Yes. You know, and I can. Okay, sorry. Scroll. We'll scroll the old fashioned way here. I see some of you have tablets and some maybe don't, so I'm going to go ahead and try to use the screen here. Hello to those who are on Zoom as well. We are definitely not ignoring you. I hope you can see this. Please shout out if you cannot. This has been a year, as I said, of leading the way despite COVID. Our team has not seen COVID as a reason to slow down, but rather a reason to step forward. And we've stepped forward in some ways that have generated some really unique outcomes, and we've reached businesses and target markets that we've not been able to touch previously. So with COVID for Washington County's economic development mission, we saw opportunity. You've heard many, many times about our great community. And one of the things that we shared with the revolving loan fund report and the executive committee was the fact that little did you know, you were setting up our great community when many years ago when you set up the original revolving loan fund program. And the reason you were setting that up is because not only does that program help to incentivize large corporations, sometimes global companies, creating really high quality jobs here in Washington County, but as importantly, if not in some respects more importantly, the program is creating successes like this, which are with much smaller operations, a family-owned company in the form of a dental clinic that sold to the next generation and not the next generation in their family, but a next generation patient who had promised one day she would be back and would own her dentist's company. And sure enough, she came back. She has served and is serving actually right now, finishing up duty in the U.S. Navy. Her husband, and yes, the Dodge name does tie back to Washington, not just Washington County, but Wisconsin lore. It is the Dodge of Wisconsin, Governor Dodge, and deep roots back here in Hartford. They chose Hartford to come back to. They've got roots in Hartford. It's a community that cares, and it's a community that they wanted to reinvest in and create family in. So when we talk about making investments in our communities, it's about the next generation of entrepreneurs and continuing that deep tradition of entrepreneurship here in Washington County. Forgive me for the scroll, but it seems to be working just fine. While our business model has evolved, and we'll hit on that very quickly, one thing has stayed the same, and that is our mission. And what makes this mission different is something that now a few of you who've heard us chat on this topic before well recognize, that we are focused in on growth companies. That is not every business there ever was, but it is the types of businesses that are generating new opportunity in Washington County and also creating the kinds of income that feed all of our businesses. And so that's where our focus is, with the ultimate objective being prosperity countywide. We talk about our values as being quote unquote that secret sauce. What matters? It is not just the secret sauce. It is what we and the members of our team are measured by. Our values are on our scorecards. Our compensation is in part a function of how well we manifest those values in the work that we do and out in our business and corporate community. And here's a great example. I'm going to scooch up a little bit just because for those who might know Dave Goodnow, I wanted to make sure that we had him in the shot there. Dave Goodnow's with BMO Harris Bank, one of several area banks that we work with. As you may know, we are not a bank. We're not a lead lender. We support the banks and the lead lenders through, for example, the Impact Revolving Loan Fund program. And so they are deep and solid partners. And when we talk about, again, making a difference and leading the way and generating and building that great community, yet another example. This is a case where it's the next generation of women in the family who are now assuming the mantle for a company that has started off as a small little, literally mom and pop shop, and has now grown into a major global corporation serving customers nationally and globally. And as you can tell, we have a little fun along the way. It is not an overstatement to say, and I'm not playing to the crowd team, but we have right now, EDWC has the best team it's ever been able to assemble, and we're not finished. We look to grow some additional capacity to be able to serve the demand that's out in the market right now. I am excited that our efforts to really optimize the talent on the team and focus in on value creation has paid off. And you'll see that shortly in some of the results. In order to continue our pattern of growth, and I will fully observe that this year, we've hit a bit of a ceiling in that growth, and to meet that next level opportunity and to break through that ceiling for the next level of accelerated growth, we will have to add some capacity. But again, a few things stay the same, such as our proven process. So one of the reasons we're able to be so transparent about what we do, measure, and be accountable is not just because we're focused on results or we're wanting to give away trade secrets on how Washington County succeeds so well with its development activities, but because we think that the way that we do things is not that easily repeatable. And this is one of those examples. There are very few development corporations that even talk this language of actually delivering real demonstrative value to the companies, for-profit, non-for-profit, small, large, that we work with, but doing so in a way that creates and uncovers new opportunities even for those customers that we work with and that they haven't noticed prior, focuses in on those areas of opportunity and delivers exactly what they need when they need it. You've not seen this slide before. If you've been on the board for a while, you've seen some of our how we do it models. This one is new. What it really represents is EDWC has taken the training wheels off fully. And as crazy as it sounds, we did so right in the middle of a pandemic. And all of our economic models were under stress test, doesn't matter. That was the opportunity, that was the time. There's a lot here, not going to go through it. I'll just point out that if you're looking for a place to share and spread the word about EDWC to your constituents, business constituents, or other constituents with whom you chat, focus in on that center box, value proposition. There's some great talking points for you there in terms of what we do, where we focus, and how we can deliver, and just literally a few bullets, immediate value for the constituents you serve. The other really exciting development is we just ran the numbers for our 2022 projections as well as our budgeting for 2022. And we have made a commitment to this board that we were going to transform the development model and really focus in on earned revenue rather than being a contribution-based nonprofit. And I'm proud to say that we have delivered ahead of schedule. We are looking at in 2022, over 90% of our funding will be earned revenue, over 90%. that final push to that earned revenue model is taking place at the end of this year as we are moving all of our other communities, our municipalities, to a subscription partnership with EDWC where they can subscribe at one of 3 different levels, and then we provide services directly for that municipality based on that subscription on an earned basis versus an investment basis. So those were some of our larger investors. We still have some private sector investors that really do feel and believe in the importance of rising tide floats all boats, and they'll be with us going forward. But we're at over 90% earned revenue for how we operate. I'll just quickly run down these pillars and let you know that you can see the date at the bottom is 2017. That's when we set forth on our strategic platform. In the innovation pillar, we're at 75% achievement of our goal. On the customer-driven pillar, 100%. In knowledge, we're at 90%. That's monetizing the creation of customer value. Connecting mission to marketplace is our biggest gap area. We still feel like we're a little bit too much of that best kept secret. Even to some folks who know us really well, we've been discovering that we've evolved, and we've evolved rather rapidly with some of the capabilities that we have and the investments and technologies that we've made, and they haven't all been aware of that. So we see it as a primary challenge in the next year to really connect our mission to the marketplace and to continue to not have us be that best kept secret. And lastly, under the pillar of teamwork, optimizing and leveraging our team, I just spoke to that. We're at 90% achievement on where we want to be from a capacity perspective based on current growth trajectory. There's a lot here in this slide. This is our vision document. We call it Our Horizon. Again, some great detail here. Happy to go through it in more depth, either individually. I'm always happy to meet with any one of you individually. That's never a problem, but I'll just mention the 3-year picture is really where we're sighted in at. And we are well on track for most of our objectives here, with the exception of right now, we are behind on the utilization rate for the RLF program. And some of that has to do with that is a partially COVID related issue, and that we definitely struggled in 2021 to close deals, more deals, higher in complexity, difficulty to close due to supply chain issues, that they just couldn't get what they needed in order to engage in their expansions or growth efforts or acquire equipment, or it was too expensive and they weren't ready to put that kind of money into it, even if we could help bridge that gap. So this was a tough year, and our growth on the RLF utilization was not where we wanted to have it, but we are looking at a very aggressive close in December here. We've got 3 projects that are for sure going to close in the next couple of weeks, and exciting ones at that. And those projects will amount to about over $1 million, 1.23 million in participation from the impact fund. And our pipeline is looking like we've got some great opportunities ahead as well for 2022, but this was definitely a tough year. Speaking of performance, not only did the county live up to its obligation and when we agreed to partner together to create an evergreen fund and move towards that earned revenue model and get off the county's contribution, so to speak, but you met your commitment early. And we don't take that for granted. We're extremely appreciative of that. It allows us to deploy funds more quickly, more rapidly. And there's a lot of people we know we need to thank. First and foremost is you and your leadership. Several years ago, when we started down this path, you recognized the opportunity to reinvest those resources that are coming into the county due to economic growth, reinvest a % of those to reach that evergreen fund level and see that return come back to you and continue to come back to you as that engine of growth. And that flywheel is spinning ever faster. We appreciate the county executive's vision for providing EDWC with not just the visionary leadership, but the energy, intensity, and frankly, every once in a while, the accountability that we needed to continue to move down that path. And last but not least, we owe the finance department a debt of gratitude. We keep pushing the envelope with them. We're operating very private sector-like, And they've been very responsive to those needs, even though they work within a public sector environment here at Washington County, and have never shied away from an opportunity to serve the corporate community. So some unsung heroes in the work that they do and the flexibilities that we ask of them, and it isn't for granted. These numbers are nothing to shake a stick at, but from our perspective, we'd like to do more and have a continued higher impact on an annual basis. Talked about that growth engine at $110,000 is what we added to in that net new sales taxes. So while you've invested some money this past year, we just added another 110,000 back in that, and that's net new, meaning incremental growth, not all of the projects in the portfolio and what they have added in new sales tax. That's just this year's projects that we were able to close. Same with the net public benefits. Again, just this year's projects, 1.8 million in net public fiscal benefit. Those are dollars into the coffers, not just of the county, but as importantly, the municipalities and our educational systems in the communities that you serve. Very real impacts coming through the investment that you're making. And that's all outside of the CapEx and that payroll, that not quite $1 million in payroll is kind of a big deal. That's how many of our small businesses grow and survive, is off of the discretionary income that folks have in their pockets and the spends that they can make here in Washington County. And they do. And all of this was despite a really, really, again, challenging year to bring projects to closure. I'd like to invite a member of our team, Sarah Stern, up to speak about our loan program very briefly. Again, a deep dive was done last month.
Thank you. So again, the microloan program was a vision that we started probably at the beginning of the year, end of last year. Really looking to try to hit that mark with companies that would maybe fall through the cracks or wouldn't be eligible for the impact loan program that we currently have. And we did. We hit that mark. We made it super easy, efficient for them, especially if the idea was by the time they got to this, or by the time they discovered this, they had been bogged down. They had already been through probably applying for other types of loans, the EIDL loan, and they just needed efficiency. So we tried to provide that, and I think we did. The numbers changed a little bit. I had one more loan sneak through. So instead of approved 15 applications, I now have 16 applications sliding right in before the end of the year. But we hit the mark. We hit all different corners of Washington County. We hit from independent contractors, dairy farmers, assisted living, trucking, landscaping, you name it. And we hit the mark with people in Germantown, Hartford, West Bend, Hubertus, and Jackson, and Richfield, and Allenton. Those are all the places that we hit. So I was very happy to see that come forward, and a lot of people appreciated being able to have that opportunity to take advantage of this. Am I just scrolling down here? Oh, it's stuck. So then every year we take a look at the portfolio, the RLF portfolio. We currently have 23 loans in that portfolio. We take a deep dive looking at each individual company and compare it from year over year. It's quite an undertaking, but it really gives us a great snapshot of what each company is doing. And it also makes sure that we are involved with all of the companies that are in our portfolio. Compliance is something that I really take to heart. I work with each and every one of the companies in that portfolio, and I make sure that they are compliant on a quarterly basis. That's with their financials, jobs pieces, things like that. But I also talk to them. What do you have going on in the market? What are you seeing? Are there any pain points? How can we help? So it's not just about give me your documents and we'll see you in another quarter. So after looking at the risk this year, the average risk score actually went down. So there's less risk to the portfolio, which in the middle of a pandemic, you would think it would have gone up. And actually this year it went down. So we're really happy with that. And we're looking to add more loans to the portfolio coming 2022.
So much. I'm going to now embarrass Sarah and let everybody know that she was just recently promoted within EDWC to our business services consultant. Whenever we see top talent, we want to make sure that we give them the best opportunities possible and practice what we preach within our corporate community. So want to keep the top talent with us. Speaking of top talent, Dan Anhalt is our Senior Director of Consultative Services. And I never shy away from the opportunity to say Senior Director.
I'll try to keep my memory intact during the presentation just for Christian's sake, okay? So this particular slide, we're going to take the opportunity to literally go through every single one of those boxes. Just kidding. We'll just talk about a few themes. As you may have seen in previous presentations, that EDWC practices what it preaches. We use the fundamentals of EOS and then a software and planning platform and forecasting system that is called Horizon that we market under that. We use it both internally, and it's also a product and service that we work with organizations with, both municipalities, nonprofits, and for-profit organizations. And the feedback we've gotten has been really positive in regards to its usage. Some of the themes that we have seen in terms of, if you take a look at the chart, the green means we did really, really well. The yellow means it's in process yet. And anything that's red, we're not quite there, but there has to be a plan in place to make that move. That's the easiest way to think about the Horizon process. It keeps you focused on accountability, and it keeps you focused on that which needs to get done to attain your goals. Some of the key things that we were able to attain, Christian touched on some of these, but the net income is going to look well for us this year, despite an incredibly challenging year. One of the areas that increased for us for the second year in a row is our consulting practice, which we've expanded over the past couple of years in terms of service offerings. I did a quick check over the last 6 months, and over the last 6 months, we've done 28 different projects. That's a lot of projects in that kind of industry. That is over the span of 23 different organizations, both municipalities, for-profit, and nonprofit organizations. And the key for us, 16 of those organizations were new to us this year. So that helped with the market penetration, getting that name out there and the kinds of products and services that we offer. And the other thing that was great is I took a look at which municipalities didn't utilize our services. And the answer is we did projects in every municipality over the last 6 months in Washington County. And that for us is really both enlightening and gratifying to be able to work all the way across the county. You'll note one of the other key things is, and Christian touched briefly on it, but it's the satisfaction piece. Customer delight, we really focus on, and we utilize something called an NPS process, which I'll touch on in just a couple of minutes. But then if I go to the next slide, you've seen this slide before. Christian touched on the economic and fiscal impact over this year. This is looking at projects that the RLF fund has been involved in over the last 10 years. So we calculate economic impact 10 years looking forward because that's probably the comfort level at how far in the future you can look. I want you to take a look at a couple of these numbers. One is the new direct payroll. So over the past 10 years, RLF projects that we've been involved in through the county's generosity and foresight to actually create this program comes to $750 million with a B dollars. If I take both direct payroll created and indirect is, there's an investment that a company makes, and then those people earn more money or there's more employees, so they go out and spend it in the economy. So there's that multiplier or that ripple effect, and it creates more jobs. So that's the indirect payroll piece. You add those together and it actually exceeds $1 billion on the projects over the last 10 years. And I think that is absolutely astounding. New private investment for capital investment. So that's the buildings, it could be land, and it would be the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment kind of thing. comes to about 319 million. And so that you know how we come to these, we have listed the assumptions on the left-hand side there. And we go pretty conservative on those assumptions so that none of that gets overstated. So we're pretty comfortable with it, not pretty, we're very comfortable with those numbers. The Net Promoter Score that I mentioned stands for really figuring out how you're doing in terms of customer satisfaction. How many people have bought something online and then like within 37 seconds, you get a pop-up that says, would you recommend us to a friend, a relative, that type of thing? Right? We see those, we get them in the mail after we do business. It might show up on our statement from a credit card, all those types of things. Well, we practice what we preach on that one as well. We contact every single one of our customers after a project is finished, and we ask them to rate us on how likely they are to recommend us, with 0 being, of course, the worst, and 10 being the best. Now, what you need to make sure that we emphasize is that the score is not a percentage. This isn't like getting an A, B, C, or D. The numbers are a score, not a percentage. So we are averaging right now on our responses a score of 92. Anything below 0 is like really poor. And this is a survey that was done of 150,000 organizations around the country. If your score is 1 to 20, you're good. You know, not fantastic, not elite, but you're good. 21 to 50 is favorable. And that is where the vast majority of companies fell in, was there and within the good category. Our target is 70, which is in that excellent 51 to 80. Our average year to date, so for this whole 10 months, is 92. And those are not my words about world-class. These are the people who invented this process back in 2003, actually, was when it was created. It's a very simple formula that's used. We just have some example numbers in here of how you can come to a number like that. And again, a score at the end, not a percentage. The ones on the left, those are percentages of your total responses. But it's a very sensitive formula. So if we would get one that falls down in that not so happy face, the frowning face on the right, that would drop our score significantly. So we really do pay attention to that, and we really do pay attention to what our customers say. We use this product as well, this whole process from a survey standpoint, with private companies. We've done this for 23 different companies in Washington County now, 23 organizations. A couple of them have been public sector. And it is designed to find out why their employees took the job, why they stay there, and why they may or may not recommend somebody to join that organization. And that has been incredibly valuable for those organizations. And we're able to do some really predictive modeling for them as well. Back to Christian.
Thank you, sir. So you just hit page down to make that happen so quickly, or what?
No, I just scrolled and then hit the right side real quick.
Wow. All right.
Those senior people catch on to technology a lot.
I was waiting for that one. Well deserved, well deserved. We wanted to give the whole team a chance to meet up with you and for you to hear from them and to know that EDWC is not about an individual, it's about an organization, and it's about the customers that we work with, again, in keeping with our values. What I'd like to do is pause for a second before we hit into uncharted waters and see if you have some questions about the past year, EDWC's performance, and then I'd close here with a few comments on the state of the Washington County economy.
Ms. Conrath?
Thank you. And I truly appreciate the service that you provide our community. Obviously, you have tons of evidence on your impact. But I have a question. You spoke of support to local municipalities. Could you give some specific examples of that support?
Sure, several. There are a variety of different ways that we support the municipalities directly. Some are very economic development traditional, meaning we would represent, if a potential deal comes in front of them, they don't see these deals every day. We've got some really skilled administrators that are managing our municipalities, but they work in a different space and do different things. We have the negotiative talents. We've got the proformas that can figure out exactly what is the right mix of incentives to try to close the deal, negotiate with the end users. We do all of that and represent the municipality essentially in packaging and putting the deal together and putting their best foot forward to try to secure the outcome. We also provide supports in terms of helping them make decisions. So for example, we will run economic and fiscal impact reports on various projects that on a single project will help them see, hey, if we put this kind of investment into the project through an incentive, this is the return that we get. One of the things that I'm really excited and has kept me here in Washington County as long as I have been is this really entrepreneurial approach that the municipalities take as well in their economic development activities. They want to know what the ROI is. They're not afraid to engage, but there needs to be a return on investment for the taxpayer. We can get them down to the nuts and bolts and have the tools and technologies that we've invested in to do that. Basically, if each municipality invested in those resources individually, not only would it be duplicative, but it would be extremely expensive and not cost effective for the taxpayers. Another example is like a softer example. There's a company that maybe is experiencing some issues in the community and the municipality can't be all knowing and everywhere all at once. So we'll help bring that to the attention and help them generate some ways and solutions that they can support that company's success in their community. And then another soft example just happened this week. I won't name the village, but there's an opportunity for a major development project in that village. And there's a tendency to just look at that project and see how, what do we need to do to secure that project? How do we make that happen? Extremely skilled at doing that. In consultation with the village, we helped them see and ran numbers and then showed them the pathway for how they could leverage that project to get a downtown blighted part of their community redeveloped by leveraging a development on the outskirts of their community to make that happen. So just a few examples, soft and hard.
It's a lot of the municipalities, they're people like us. We represent, our citizens, the constituents. We're not the financial subject matter experts. So I appreciate that very much.
You're very welcome. Other questions? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and move on. So literally, we were looking not just at the now, but ahead. And as we do that, if anybody can tell you right now that they know what the future is going to hold as it relates to economic development and growth, they are lying. So we are in the midst of uncharted waters. There are a variety of indicators that are all pointing in different directions, making it really difficult to tease out some themes, but we'll do our best and share a few observations with you. This is tracking the population growth. I love the trend line here that our economic statistician partners have created. They basically took a pre-COVID trend line, if you will, and just extended it out, which I think again is potentially a fallacy. And one way that you have an indication of that flatlining of our population is take a look at the 2019 date and then look at it for 2020. Granted, there wasn't a lot of migration going on, but a lot of this is happening pre-COVID as well. And you'll see that in a few of the charts that this just isn't a COVID thing. It's really easy or tempting to try to say, well, COVID disrupted our economic trends. You'll see in several slides that there was activity and trends that were changing pre-COVID. So I don't think we should be overplaying that. What it does do is reinforce the importance of focusing on our great community and ensuring that the folks that we are developing, the companies that we develop are looking next generational and aren't one-hit wonders in our economy. Speaking of population growth, one reason you'll see it's flatlined is you see it in the data here, the green 434. Given the size of our county, a net positive of 434 as a location outside of a major, one of Wisconsin's arguably two major metro areas is pretty muted. That is not the kind of growth trajectory or pattern that we would like to see. And it's not just about growth for growth's sakes. It's about the churn and ensuring that as companies evolve and develop and populations occur, if you're not growing, the proverbial, if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no such thing as just staying the same. Yes. Sure. Yeah.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question as regards to the previous slide, the population growth
Sure.
slide. You hear whenever you're talking about economic development, the worker, which is pretty much, the 18 to 65 type group, but the population of Wisconsin is at best flat. There are 72 counties. You're projecting a 2% growth. Do you have any idea of what we are versus the other 71 counties? I know we're in the upper half, but I mean, are we at the top or I'm curious to find out what you're looking at as regards to data that we might not necessarily have access to, is how we're faring among the other counties in the state.
Statewide, we're faring well because a lot of the counties are net losing population. And some of that is, as you just pointed out, to demographics. In fact, most of it is demographics. So the fact that we're gaining population puts us in a top position right there. In Southeast Wisconsin, I'd say we're not in necessarily a lead position on the basis of growth. I'd have to get back with you with specific numbers county by county. But what you can see is while they're the blue and the red is slightly larger than the red. The red is population literally leaving Washington County for another location. It's not commuting. This is moving out of the county. We've got some pretty large both recipient communities and donor communities, and they tend to be the same. So any of the migration that we're seeing here is happening within the region by and large, and that's what to us is concerning. If you compare, you can't compare us to Madison. Obviously, that's different. They're pulling from outside the state, outside the region. But I would like us to do stronger within the Southeast Wisconsin region, and that's why I think some of the initiatives that the county's undertaking and the county executive office is leading is super important. That Sandsdemic you've heard Josh preach about is noted in these numbers. So yeah, thanks for the question. I can get back to you with more specifics, but in general, we're not kicking it out of the ballpark in our region. And in fact, you kind of forecast where some of this trend activity is going to go here. I am going to consult some of my notes because I did take some time to consider these numbers in advance. I want to make sure I'm not missing any points here, not purposely looking down. But as you see here, there's a tendency when you see an unemployment rate rise and say that that's bad, and an unemployment rate go down and say that that's good. And as with most things, the story is quite a bit more complicated. But what's noteworthy here is when the unemployment was rising, again, while 2020 saw a high unemployment rate, if you will, which you would anticipate a rise, what we have been seeing is unemployment rates that have been trending sub 3%. And on top of that, while we have quote unquote come out of COVID, we saw, change post COVID here, but we're still hovering around that sub 3%. And that's important because that not only shows a tight labor market, but that forces you to ask, if we had such a high unemployment rate before and we're dramatically down, is that because there suddenly is a lot of job creation or absorption? The answer is no, not entirely. And that's where this next slide is important and a key takeaway. This is workforce participation. The data would seem to indicate, and I'll say I'm not an economist, but I'm playing one on TV right now. The data would seem to indicate that part of the equation in Washington County is the fact that our workforce participation is in decline, meaning people are leaving the market. If they leave the workforce market, they can't be unemployed because they're not in the market seeking an opportunity. And what you'll see is that there was well before COVID, precipitous decline in labor force participation. Some of that is demographic. There are retirees that are finally wanting to retire, or at least start their second or third careers in some cases. No comments to our team, Dan. In any event, You saw that there were some folks re-entering the workforce during COVID, interesting observation. But as soon as the situation is relaxing, we're getting back to, again, reduction in labor participation. Some of it is due to what you may have been hearing about in the media, popular media. People are reevaluating their sense of values and what's important to them and wanting to shift careers and make changes. But again, workforce participation is a function of somebody who has left the market and is not even in the statistics. To be at a 69% level with the kind of county that we are, that's a challenge. It's a challenge to our growth. And as we look into 2022, we're not seeing any changes in that trajectory. And that again reinforces the importance of working hard to generate net new population for our county, because we can't expect who's here to fill that gap. There is a little bit of a bright spot of opportunity, whereas before we were talking about migration, these two maps are reflectant of commuting, meaning people live here and are commuting out, or they live somewhere else and they're commuting in. The first map on the left is just what I mentioned. It's a reflection looking at the counties around us of who's donating to Washington County their workforce, namely Dodge County as a bright blue example. And where are we losing workforce? And if it's red, it means there's net loss commuting every day. If it's blue, it means there's net gain every day. And so what you can see here is we have some significant opportunity to capture the commute to facilitate some of our workforce challenges. Now, don't overstate that opportunity. There's skills mismatch, meaning some of the talent that lives here in Washington County can't find employment here because their skills are different from what is available here, and vice versa. So some of it has to do with skills issues. The second map on the right is a closer look in at Washington County. You might recognize your own zip code. It's at the zip code level. Again, the blue indicates that folks are working where they live. So West Bend and Germantown, by and large, are tending to work where they live, whereas other communities are seeing significant daily out commute, meaning that they live there but are finding employment somewhere else. Again, there's opportunities there. You can't overstate the opportunity. This really is more of a demographic issue that we're talking about, but I did want to point out that we have some significant places where we can grab some talent if we can connect them to job opportunities right here in the county. When you see job growth trends, and I love again the prediction modeling of the future, we think this is, oh, sorry, I didn't notice. Thank you.
Pete Sorcy, you ring in?
Thank you. I've been asking this for the last bunch of years or so, and I don't want to be a pain, but all I'm saying is, in fact, Brian Williams, when he was on NBC News at night doing the thing, and he mentioned something. We have a way of tracking people who are on unemployment, but what about the guys that are off the radar screen that are still aren't working?
Right.
But the guy, Brian came out with that. He said, well, the thing is 9 million, but it's not. He says it's like more like 15 million. The people who are off that throughout the years that we have done this, don't they have some kind of way to track the people that are off? I mean, I know it's probably hard, but.
That's the labor force participation slide that you saw. You can take a look at the numbers off on the left side of here. I could go back and you can actually see who's falling off and coming back on.
But don't they usually record the people that are on unemployment?
Not workforce participation. That
Okay.
is the unemployment. So this
Okay, no.
slide was made for you. Come on, give us some credit. You know,
What credit? Cash.
this slide was
Country's
made
going
for
to
you.
hell.
We knew that this question was coming. So
Yeah,
there you
right.
go. Here
No,
it
I didn't,
is.
Chris, I didn't mean to do that. All I was just saying is throughout the years, they've been doing that and they don't mention the guys who are off the radar screen.
And we definitely are focused in on
Yeah.
that. And we think that that's a big issue.
Yeah, thank
Yep.
you.
You bet.
Supervisor Conrath?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Could you just please clarify the slide 25, the colors you spoke of, say, 11-53086, that more of those individuals, the pretty colorful map, that the two side-by-side ones where they're commuting in or out?
So you're talking the one on the right?
Correct. Yep. The smaller one by zip code.
Right.
Could you clarify, are they going just outside the zip code or outside the county?
Outside the zip code.
Okay.
Great clarifying question. Thank you for that. So they could be going to the neighboring zip code. You could see folks, for example, in Hartford going to West Bend or Germantown. Now, with these job growth trends, I want to point out a couple of things that we've noticed and that is continuing. COVID is that slot, that big drop, 2019 to 20. It started in China in December of 19. So 20 was a big hit year for that. So there you see COVID in terms of job growth. It wasn't. But what we'd like to point out is that there was already flattening going on in 2018, which has absolutely nothing, zero zip to do with the COVID situation. So when we look at this growth of jobs that is being modeled here, we feel, EDWC feels that this is a bit aggressive, if not very aggressive. Some of the reasons would be clearly COVID is not going away. It's eventually going to become, I don't know, I'm not going to be Mr. Fauci up here, but it is definitely not going away. It's going to continue to evolve. We're going to have to deal with it like we do the cold, the flu, the whatever. But it is a reality that's here to stay. Like it or not, so is the political divisions that we have and the disruptions that could create is also here for a more durable period. And that will affect economic potential and capabilities. We're also looking, as we mentioned, at that labor force participation rate that your question was around. That continues to downward trend, which is going to mute the growth potential. And last but not least, in these next few slides, you'll see the types of jobs that are growing is changing in Washington County. And it's all about economies of scale versus lots of small businesses creating. That's important, but that's not seeming to be where the trend is, which does not help job growth. And you throw in automation. So here's some reasons why we think that. Gross regional product is a function of how much we produce as a county. And the higher the production, the more likely there's exports going on, which means new money into the county. You can see that manufacturing outstrips any other industry in terms of gross national product for Washington County. Maybe not a surprise to you, but the magnitude is powerfully significant. A lot of new money going into our economy coming through manufacturing. And this is now from jobs standpoint. This isn't job creation. This is who's got most of the jobs. And again, manufacturing leads the way, not surprisingly, followed by retail. Here's what's really interesting. And this is what it's important. Not only are these creating jobs, but these are creating the kinds of jobs that put money into people's pockets, and the manufacturing sector tends to, along with also generating that gross national product, which is new money into our economy, extremely important. Not to take away from any other industry, but very important. Now notice this. Where's manufacturing? This is job growth. It's not there. Different industries are creating jobs right now. Again, partially a function of demographic change, partially a function of technology and trends. If you can't find people, you have to automate. And if you automate, you don't need people. It's a little bit of a vicious cycle. You can further see this in where our job postings are going. So part of the technologies that we've invested in allows us to monitor real time what posting traffic looks like. And by postings, think Indeed, Monster, those types of services. We've invested in a scraper service that scrapes all of those and allows us to massage the data and understand what's happening in Washington County. We have a relatively high, I should say, posting intensity, which means that unfortunately for the same unique position, they have to repost. So they're not finding the talent they're looking for, is a partial indicator there. And the posting duration, 30 days, hard to make any meaning out of that until you do a deeper dive in exactly what position. Some positions take longer. It's just the way it works. But you can see there's been a general upward trend in posting. In 2020, you see that COVID slice there. Well, you can't in your slide, I do on my graphic, but November 2020 rough slice on either side of that shows that despite COVID, companies have been looking for talent and have been posting for talent. So then what becomes important? Maybe. There we go. Is where the postings are happening, and you'll start to see why. West Bend is doing a lot of posting. And why might that be? You'll see in a couple of slides here as we continue to go forward. The types of postings tend to be your transportation, again, economies of scale. Even if we're buying from, let's say, no, there's not a Best Buy in Washington County, but if we're buying from a retailer, we may have that product delivered. Even if they have a brick and mortar store, it may show up on our doorstep. So there's a much greater need for product movement and delivery for bringing it home and meeting current customer expectations. And based on the profile of the types of jobs that are being posted, you can see Amazon is a leader doing postings in Washington County, even though they don't have a distribution center presence here. Some of that is some of the trucks that you see driving around, as well as the fact that there's a need to, if they're going to continue to grow their network, to build that network out. So that's one we've taken some notice that there's more activity in our market and that it has a high intensity for posting. But take a look at Delta Defense, obviously a now West Bend based company, rapidly growing and happens to be a current and past customer of the Impact RLF. So you never know where these projects take you as you make these kinds of investments. Now a top job creator in our market standing out, and where you really see that is in the skill sets that are required and that are in these postings. So if you scrape each of the postings to see what types of needed skills they have, you can see it's communication, customer service, sales, management. Sounds a little bit like Delta Defense. Hey, looks like we've got a question.
Yep.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you. If you could roll back a slide to the top posting companies. And you point out Delta Defense. Can you comment on their posting intensity is high along with the duration of their posts? Like, is that it's kind of a, Walgreens is similar to that too. What does that suggest for their type of positions?
Well, it could suggest a few different things, but knowing what we know about the company and how they are a destination workplace, it is not issues that the company is churning. It's more, and we also happen to know, and I can't obviously speak to proprietary information. They are a no secret, fast, high growth company, making a difference in our local economy and a very positive difference with quality jobs. If we extrapolate what we know about the company, which we're fortunate enough to have some insight, it's really about them not finding the skills that they need in Washington County to continue to fill the positions that they continue to grow.
Okay.
And so they've gone more virtual as well to spread out their market for talent. And they're not the only company that's doing that. If they can't find it here, they have to find other ways to get at the talent they need to grow. That's a little bit surmising, so I'll caveat it that way, but that's what we see.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, we need to wrap up. So I was getting the hook. Just to wrap up, this last slide is just demonstrating something that you have heard in the media, and just want to point out that it's happening real time here in Washington County. And that is the fact that we are starting to see some wage inflation and wage pressures. While the posting intensity has gone down recently, the wages have not. You would think that there would be a correlation. The more people posting, the more competition there is. When you see that sort of inverse relationship, that's sort of indicative of the fact that there are true inflationary pressures in the market right now, and that these wage increases may be durable. They're not just a temporary blip in the current scarcity market that we're in. This looks like it could be durable. It could be sustained. We'll have to see. Again, we're in uncharted waters, a lot of competing indicators here, but we're ready to play and we're ready to continue to respond no matter what. Thank you for your time, and appreciate the opportunity to meet with you once a year.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cheshire, for that wonderful report. Outstanding. You and your team always do a great job for us. All right, moving on. We will go to resolution and ordinances. Resolution 2021, Resolution 65, commendation of Deborah Van Beek. Need a motion and a second. Mr. Hartwig, Mr. Gonering. Yes, please.
Whereas Deborah Van Beek has contributed 20 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Deborah Van Beek has chosen to retire from her present position of registered nurse at Samaritan Health Center, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Deborah Van Beek for her 20 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to her heartfelt thanks for her many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Deborah Van Beek as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Please join me. Okay, I will, at my discretion, move up item F, resolution. Oh, never mind. Okay. We'll go to resolution 66, voiding of stale checks. I need a first, Peter Sorcy, and a second, Mr. Samisek. And any questions on this resolution? Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you. We handled this just before this meeting at the administrative committee meeting. This did pass unanimously, and I would urge you to pass this unanimously as well. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we will take an electronic vote on this by majority. It's not coming up. It's mine. There we go. You gotta hit present first. It's majority. So majority, okay. All right, motion passes. Okay, now we will take item F, resolution 70. Resolution authorizing Washington County to enter into the settlement agreements with McKesson Corporation, Cardinal Health Incorporated, AmerisourceBergen Corporation, Johnson Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, Ortho McNeil, etc. We have here attorney Andrew Phillips to speak to this. First, we'll need a motion, Mr. Schleif, and a second, Mr. Mark Ward. Thank you. You may go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Brad, did you want to say a couple of words first?
Sure. As you know, the county passed a resolution some time ago authorizing us to file suit against Big Pharma to deal with the opioid crisis that has really taken over this country. And we've seen it in many areas within our own county. And so we've been involved in that litigation, and I've brought periodic updates to you from time to time when information has been made available. And most recently, I told you that we are to the point now where it looks like a settlement has been reached, and we're at the point now where we need to start talking about whether we're going to sign off on that or not. And to that end, with us tonight is Attorney Andrew Phillips. He is one of our counsel. He is one of the representatives that the county has retained to represent our interests. And I asked him to join us tonight because we do need to make that decision this evening as to whether or not we're going to pass this resolution that authorizes the county to enter into this settlement and accept those proceeds. And I asked Attorney Phillips to be here because I thought there was nobody better than him to come in and sort of walk you through very briefly what the settlement looks like, what the agreements look like, and why it really is, I think, in the county's best interest that we sign off on these agreements and get our proceeds that we have coming. Attorney Phillips is also general counsel for Wisconsin Counties Association. He's a highly respected attorney. He's the guy that people in my profession call when we're in over our heads on something, and he's always been very gracious and kind to me over the course of my 10 years county attorney. And I'm very pleased and proud to welcome him here tonight. And I'll turn the mic over to him and he can kind of walk you through where we're at.
Thank you, Brad, for those kind words. And I'm just thankful that you didn't ask your county executive to make my introduction. I'll leave it at that. This is a discussion that's been 5 years in the making, quite honestly. Back when we had Administrator Showman leading the charge and saying that this is a situation where we as county government need to come together and hold the entities responsible for this terrible opioid epidemic. And since that time, 5 years ago, when Washington County was the first of about 200 to 300 counties across the country to start the litigation effort, we're now at thousands of counties and cities and villages across the country that are seeking to hold those responsible for this terrible epidemic. It's easiest for me to explain this in the concept of dividing into threes. The litigation from its outset was divided into three different classes of defendants and three different trial tracks and three different settlement tracks. What you have before you tonight deals with the distributors and Johnson & Johnson. So there's one manufacturer in that. So this is step one of 3 steps, hopefully 3 steps, in order to bring some monetary relief to Washington County to try to combat the epidemic. And so this was, as I said before, a discussion 5 years in the making. Since that time, 5 years ago, we've had a lot of lawyers preparing for trial, a lot of lawyers, and frankly, weekly discussions with a class of defendants about how do we try to resolve this case. You should be particularly proud of the group of attorneys, not necessarily me, but the group of attorneys that you have as Washington County, because you have representatives at the very high levels in terms of the trial track and in terms of the settlement track. And so Washington County has been at the forefront of this litigation since its inception 5 years ago. And so when we come to you and say that we highly recommend that the county consider this settlement and approve it, it comes with that 5 years of knowledge of where we've been, what our prospects are for going to trial, and what it is that you are going to receive as a benefit of this settlement agreement. Now, I also want to paint the picture for Wisconsin as opposed to other states in the country, because I think that's important for your consideration as well. In the rest of the country, when a settlement comes into the states, that settlement is divided among the state and all local governments within that particular state. In Wisconsin this past summer, as a result of Act 57, we have a statute on the books that 70% of the proceeds of any of the settlement to the opioid litigation is going to go directly to the counties and 16 litigating municipalities. All right. So that means that you already are above and beyond what a county of similar size of Washington County would receive anywhere in the country. Okay. Second, it requires an understanding and agreement among all of those litigating local governments and the state of Wisconsin. I refer to that, keeping with the theme of threes, it's a 3-step process. The first couple of steps are done. We have the Attorney General signed off. We have the Joint Finance Committee signed off as of last week. And now it's up to us as counties to try to bring that settlement home. There is a time-sensitive element to this. As Attorney Stern mentioned, this is a situation that needs to be resolved by January 2nd. Why is January 2nd important? That's a deadline date whereby we, as Washington County and counties in Wisconsin, can qualify for all of the bonuses and incentives to maximize the amount of the settlement. In other words, there is a base amount to the settlement, and then if you hit certain targets, and in our case, the target is 100% participation by counties and other litigating cities and villages. We hit that target, we get 100% of the available settlement proceeds. Again, that's not going to happen in every state. And so there is a really, really good reason for you to take this up tonight. I happen to think there is a really, really good reason for the county to approve this settlement when we look at the funds that would be coming into Washington County. And again, my interest is making sure that we get that money into Washington County and put it to work as quickly as we can. So again, I know it's a very long settlement agreement. There's a lot of paperwork in front of you. I'm happy to answer questions. If you want me to provide an overview of any aspect of that paperwork, I'm happy to provide that overview as well. But I'm hoping that we try to make it relatively straightforward in terms of the agreement, not only with the defendants to settle the case, but also amongst the Wisconsin counties and 16 cities and villages as to how we're going to allocate the proceeds. So with that, maybe if there's anything I might have missed, Attorney Stern or Mr. Vice Chair?
Supervisor Carol Mary.
Yes, sir. Thank you. What if we don't make that 100% goal? If somebody, one county or one municipality says, no, we don't want to do this, then what happens?
We've got tentative agreement from all of the lawyers that represent these municipalities and all of these counties. And we're in another, again, dealing with Wisconsin, a strange position that we've only got two groups of attorneys that represent all of the counties in Wisconsin. And so we've been working together all along. In other states, they've got literally hundreds and sometimes in some cases thousands of lawyers that are working and they are not going to agree. In Wisconsin, we've got agreement there. And so we've got recommendation from all of the litigating entities, lawyers to say this particular package represents the best package.
And there's confidence that we can make that January 2nd date by all these units?
Yes, I'm an optimist.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. We've got the holidays coming up and I'm going to pray hard.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Krebs. Supervisor Brian Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Vice Chair, sorry. Two things off the top of my head. The 5.6 million that the documents call out for, is that before or after the 25% attorney's fees are taken,
That represents the before and it's 20%.
or 20%?
Right. So that's before. And I just want to note this, the more important part on that sheet is the percentage, because we're assuming that we have maximum participation. So I don't want you to get 5.6 million stuck in your head. If I'm not able to follow through on my promise tonight, and we only get 99% participation, and we get penalized a couple of $1 million, the numbers might fluctuate. I'm going to have a much better understanding come mid-January of exactly how much money would come into Washington County and when that money would be coming in.
Okay. The second question is besides the monetary amounts, are the defendants, are they admitting any other guilt or what? Or is this kind of a hold harmless from this point forward?
No, that's a very good point. And that was a very, very important aspect of the negotiations here, is that we're going to try to provide resources so that local governments can combat this epidemic now. But if it continues or it restarts, then we're back in the same position. And so it was important that we put certain players within this epidemic out of the opioid game. In other words, they are no longer going to manufacture opioids and things like that. You don't have a settlement agreement with Purdue Pharma before you today, because Purdue Pharma, I think everybody might have heard that Purdue Pharma, if you've seen the show Dope Sick, you know Purdue Pharma is one of the primary players here. They're in bankruptcy court, and we are arguing about how the Sackler family is not going to get away scot-free. And so just like with Purdue Pharma, with these distributors, and with Johnson & Johnson, we're taking Johnson & Johnson out of the opioid manufacturing game. We're putting certain restrictions on the distributors so that they have to monitor and do the things that they didn't do 15, 20 years ago to try to stop this epidemic. And so it was very important. Listen, it's all in the settlement agreement about they're making certain promises and assurances as it relates to their future conduct, so we don't have to deal with this situation down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Jeffrey Schleif.
Thank you, sir. So with the Purdue's and those still down the road, this will not be the final settlement. This will be the final settlement with these particular plaintiffs.
Well, we're the plaintiffs, so these
Oh,
particular
the
defendants. that's right.
defendants.
And again, dividing it into three classes, this resolves the claims against the distributors and Johnson & Johnson. You're right, Purdue, Endo, Teva, some of the manufacturers, they're a separate track. And then we've got the retail pharmacies who we think did some really bad stuff too. Those are the Walgreens, the CVS's and things like that.
So you'll have a job for a while.
It looks like, it, yes, although I'm hoping that this is the groundwork to finally, because to me, I mean, yeah, $5.6 million, it's a great sum of money. And I'm sure all of you are saying, wow, that would really help our budget. But when you talk about combating an epidemic of this proportion, I mean, it's really difficult to wrap your head around what resources are going to be necessary to adequately try to stem the tide of this. And it's getting worse. I just saw, where was it? It was a county where they had an increase from 8 to 22 opioid deaths from 20 to 21. That's astounding to me. I mean, we're talking about an epidemic that really found its origins back in the mid to late 90s. And now we're finding still the perpetuation of these problems. And we've got to figure out a way to stop it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we will vote on this electronically. This will take a majority vote. And the item passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much. Congratulations. I'll keep you posted through Attorney Stern as we progress. And happy holidays.
Thank you, Attorney Phillips. Good to see you again. Moving on. Let's go to resolution 67, resolution authorizing the application of an airport public facilities permit and appoint the Tap Yard as concessionaire at Ackerman's Grove Park, Town of Polk. Can I get a motion? We'll go Bob Hartwig as a first and Supervisor Brian Krebs as a second. And Supervisor Conrad has the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just want to address potentially holding off a vote on this until next month. I am also appointed County Supervisor Representative for the Little Cedar Lake PRD. And we did hold a meeting on Monday, and I do appreciate Sheriff Schulteis, Ed Eberly, Logan Bliss, and John Chudrin attending that meeting and shedding a little bit more light into this proposal. And initially after that meeting too, it seemed like most of the questions were answered, but a couple of things have come to light since that meeting in these last couple of days. First, the DNR has not been able to weigh in on this. The Ackerman's Grove was founded on grants, and those grants have not been explored for the specifics of the grant either.
Excuse me, let me interrupt you a quick second. So how about you're making a motion, I take it, to postpone?
To postpone this vote for 1 month, just to allow more proper time to review this and for key stakeholders to be properly informed to make a better decision next month.
Okay, so I will accept your motion and I
Okay.
will ask for a second on the motion to postpone. Seconded by Ms. Dice. Okay, so we will speak to the amendment now. So I take it you'll want to speak to that and outline your why you would prefer to postpone, make your case.
Okay, yeah, like I said, some new information has come to light since our Monday Little Cedar Lake PRD meeting. The DNR has not been able to weigh in on this. The town of Polk has not been able to review this. Ackerman Grove sits on the town of Polk land as key stakeholders. And also the Ackerman's Grove was created by grants, and the details of those grants have not been able to be fully explored and to see if this plan meets the requirements of the grants of how Ackerman's Grove was created. Thus, you know, I would like to postpone this just for 1 month to get everyone better informed and do the deeper dive into those details that have not been explored yet.
Okay. Supervisor Christopher Bossert.
Yep, a question for the executive branch. How would postponing this a month impact our negotiations with the potential vendor?
So first of all, I do want to thank Supervisor Conrath. I think she's done a great job, attending and taking interest in some of the concerns that have arisen on this topic. And so I was actually prepared for the fact that somebody might look to postpone it. And I was able to speak again today with the proposed concessionaire out there. And he did indicate that there is about a 6-month lead time on some of the supplies that he needs to order for the season. And in addition to that, putting through the applications to DOR to the state for the possibility of securing the permit out there, in addition to some of the tasks that are needed to sort of check the boxes to mitigate and work through the concerns, make this season difficult. So, in talking to Supervisor Conrath very briefly, one of the things we talked about was noting whether or not the postponement is a symbol of concern by this board for a lack of support for the initiative, versus really wanting to continue with the due diligence. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but certainly wanting to send the correct message to the applicant with regards to what we would be pursuing. We have talked about how I think this process has worked really well. The discussions with the PRD and the Cedar Lake Conservation Foundation have brought forward good participation. It will ultimately result, I think, in a better product. We will work through all of their concerns in the agreement process if we move forward, as well as ensure that we are meeting all of the standards that we committed to when we accepted money from the DNR when Ackerman's Grove was founded. So I am optimistic that the end result will be better because the PRD is being involved at the level that they are. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but postponing this is not ideal from an applicant standpoint and a timing standpoint for this season.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that it could destroy this deal or put it off for an entire year if we postpone for a month. Does that seem correct?
That is one possible outcome. I think if it was, and I'm saying that because if the intent is we support this, we just want to make sure that all of this stuff gets done, then I would probably ask you to vote in favor of the resolution and make your, suggestions in terms of combating the concerns that have come up as part of almost a, contingency on the approval is versus a postponement and a denial. Or if you do choose to postpone it, indicating somehow that, we're not postponing this because we don't like the project. That allows us to have the conversations with the PRD, I think, in a productive tone that we're still moving forward. We want to continue to talk through hours. Some of the concessions we're making around sound, noise is one of the big concerns out there. And we have reason to believe that we will meet in the middle on those issues.
Okay, and being familiar with DNR grants, do you have any reason to believe that DNR grants from when Ackerman's Grove was founded might in some way interfere with our ability to do this?
I do not believe that. So I have read the grant agreements on the property. So there are two. One is a lake protection grant, which really talks about the lake. The beer garden, in my mind, that one, she has already come out and said that they don't believe they have any jurisdiction over it. The grant in question referenced by CLCF in their position to the Cedar Lakes Conservation Foundation reached out via email prior to this meeting to Don, and I know Don's not here. So in all fairness, stating that their organizational position is they want to get clearance from the DNR. And or if the resolution is approved, that we still get clearance from the DNR, which would be our course of action. The Knowles Nelson Stewardship Urban Green Space Grant for Outdoor Recreation does talk about public access, as well as, you know, there are some strings within that grant. However, in reading it, other things we do, soccer agreements, outdoor recreation, concessions, seem consistent to me with regards to how that would be interpreted. So I think it would be I'm not a lawyer. Brad, do you have any? But it did not concern me. What did concern me was how long it might take the DNR to make a determination or to get back to us. And so that was why we were kind of suggesting, well, we have been talking to them. Ed reached out to them today. So we know that we're communicating with them about what those restrictions are.
So to sum up, it kind of sounds like if we delay, we're throwing a lot of potential issues into the mix. And if we don't delay, the potential issues are pretty minor. So we're probably better off deciding this tonight.
I guess I would just advise the group that the policy question here is whether or not you support the concept, which you've supported in the past on several
Yep.
occasions, to look at putting a beer garden in Ackerman's Grove. We've had other vendors in this location, and we have, I think the PRD and everyone would agree, we have a reputable vendor here. The operation itself's quality is not in question. So if in theory we are in agreement with that concept, that is really the question that you are asking. A lot of these details about the proposed agreement and the
Really fall to
negotiations
you.
and we have to
Yeah.
work through all of those things
Yeah.
and apply to the state before this can materialize. And we have every intention of doing that.
Yeah, our role tonight is really to decide, do we like this idea or do we not like this idea? So postponing it doesn't really do anything for us to clarify that. So I'm going to recommend that everybody vote against postponing it. And we decide this tonight, whether we like the idea or not. Thank you.
Supervisor Marcella Bishop.
Thank you. My thoughts are that if there are concerns by the entities that Supervisor Conrath mentioned, and we do find, digging through everything, that there is a problem, will that come back and hurt our concessionaire in the long run? I mean, asking for a postponement protects the county and the concessionaire, I would think, to make sure that we have our ducks in a row before they go jumping off the deep end into this. Just my thoughts.
In response to what Jamie was saying before about the grant language, I did have a chance to take just a sort of a quick glance at it. And what it appears to me in looking at that is that it's very generic language in the grant. And what it really says is that the park has to be essentially used for what is acceptable public outdoor recreation. It doesn't define what that is, but there are beer gardens like this across the state, different counties. So I would find it somewhat hard to believe that they wouldn't approve this as a use. I'm assuming that, obviously, but the grant agreements themselves don't really rule anything out. They just say the parks have to be used for acceptable outdoor public recreation.
Supervisor Pamela Conrath.
Up by, oh, sorry, I would just like to reiterate, really backing that up 1 month just to make sure all key stakeholders are properly informed. We do our due diligence. It will not delay this a whole year. It might delay it, a month. If you look at the if you're aware of the plan, they're speaking of May through November. So this would maybe back up in being initiated into June 1st instead of maybe May 1st. There are just, too many unknowns at this point. And like I had said, too, one of the key stakeholders, Town of Polk, this has not even gone through there as an agenda item yet. And this is a little different than the beer gardens held there in the past. I love beer gardens myself, and craft beers but this beer garden that is being proposed is having a trailer essentially sit there May through November and having the beer garden run Wednesday through Sunday. It's not just pop-up ones a couple of times throughout the summer. Thus, we have to do our, due diligence and look into this a little bit more. Like I said, it doesn't reflect any of the past, beer gardens where they're just a couple of times for a few hours throughout this past summer.
Supervisor Joseph Conring.
Yes, thank you. I heard something here and that about Township Polk wasn't informed about this or didn't have time to discuss this or bring it forward. I think that's a mistake by whoever was in charge of this project. The other thing is you talk about the grant with the DNR. Way they write these up, they have the right to say yes or no usually on this stuff. So even if we think it's okay and we tell this person it's okay, we pass this thing to go forward tonight. And then all of a sudden the DNR says, no, 3 months down the road. Who's going to pay this gentleman back for everything that he's ordered and had to pay for already? I think we really should have our ducks in a row before we go forward with it. I'm in agreement with it, but we have to have all the check marks done. I mean, you're going, you're just flying by the seat of your pants here.
I just want to note, I did personally connect with the Town of Polk when we were doing the RFP and looking to put a concessionaire in this park. So we have reached out. We did let them know we were having the presentation at the PRD meeting. It wasn't asking them for approvals, but we definitely communicated with them.
Okay.
Supervisor Christopher Bossert.
Okay, I just want to refocus us back to our role here. We talk about putting all our ducks in a row. That's what the executive branch does. That's not what we do. Our role here is to make a policy decision as to whether or not we like this concept. And if we like it, then the executive branch will manage that whole process of working to get the DNR grants, working with the vendor, working with the municipalities to make sure all those ducks get in a row. That's the executive branch. That's what they do when we went to a county executive form of government. All we are doing here is approving whether or not we like the concept. If we delay a month with the 6-month lead time that this vendor needs in order to order supplies, that could wipe out enough of their season that it's no longer worthwhile to do the 2022 season, which then puts them back to 2023. It delays this whole thing a year. By the effect of delaying a policy discussion as to whether or not we like this idea by a full month. So I think we should decide the policy tonight and then let the executive branch carry out their role of dotting all the i's, crossing all the t's, making sure all the ducks are in a row. So I'm encouraging everybody to vote against delaying this. Thank you.
Supervisor Brian Krebs.
Thank you. Before us tonight is a resolution for the application of this permit. Can we not approve this permit so it can start to be processed and let any other concerns run concurrently at the same time? The permit, I don't know how long that it takes for the approval of this permit, but during that review time, would we not be able to work through whatever issues the PRD, any entities that either have a stakeholder in this or want to be a part of it? I think there's still time that we can work through it without delaying the project. And I would even question who would even has authority over to make requests other than us, the county wishing to be a good neighbor to the neighbors around it, whether the physical neighbors or the municipalities themselves. So I think there's room that we'd be able to find the happy medium, but keep this project on track. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further questions, what we're going to do is a voice vote on this. So no, I'm sorry, that usually is done at the committee level. This is the board level, so there is not. But I thank you for being here tonight. So we will take a voice vote on this, a vote on the amendment. So, and I will be in favor of the amendment, and a nay will be to shoot the amendment down and continue with the resolution. So all in agreement signify by saying aye. And all those, we're going to need a hand up, please. The ayes. This is to postpone.
Yes. So we have Pam, Jeff, Bob, Phil, and
And all opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Gallus was a nay.
Okay, the amendment fails, so we will move on to the original motion. Authorizing the application. Any more statements on the actual application itself or the Supervisor Conrath?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, and I would just like, again, to thank the individuals who came to the PRD meeting at Everly, Logan Bliss, and Supervisor John Shudron and Sheriff Schulteis. There was allowed at the Little Silly PRD meeting, we did openly allow feedback from the community, and I did receive some emails these last couple of days too. But as I shared also, when you are voting on this, just to realize that this, we don't have a written actual proposal, but the thought process that was shared in, verbally, kind of a verbal presentation was a Wednesday through Sunday event. Essentially the hours leading up to about 9 p.m. He said, he was very diplomatic with that too. Initially was, thinking a little bit later, but feedback, the owner of the tap house, he was, taking in feedback and duly noting people's comments too, to maybe end a little bit earlier. But there is concern about, why the Wednesday through Sunday and still that long of a time frame, and all the way from May to November. There's multiple concerns that were raised regarding, parking, because that is also utilized by, there's soccer tournaments, there's weddings that are held there, and then of course, the boat traffic. But Sheriff Schulteis did speak to that he would address that, and also the owner had shared that they had no issues in the past with the ones that he had ran. But you all haven't been aware or informed of any of this, so I'm trying to fill you in real quickly. But really, the long and short of it is, if we are to move forward, that it is done in due diligence and with the partnership that was stated, that trust, that the Little Cedar Lake PRD, the Tonapoke, the key stakeholders' voices are heard and included within the proposal, and that the proposal is presented April prior to it being initiated in May, like they spoke of at the Little Cedar Lake PRD meeting. Which can then be a little bit scary, because then what if that proposal doesn't look anything like we entrusted it to be created? I personally do believe in the county leadership here, but it is a little bit of a wing of faith without seeing anything in writing ahead of time. But just to make you all aware.
All right. Thank you. Supervisor John Shadron.
Thank you. And I want to add on to the concerns that Pam had said as well. I'm actually for this. I think this program has gone well before, and they have done this beer garden with other providers before. But I've also heard other concerns at Ackerman that deal with parking issues, that this might raise up more parking issues, the noise levels and things like that. I just want to make sure when we do this agreement, we take into consideration all those issues that may come up, so we have ways to mitigate that. Okay? Thank you.
Supervisor Randy Markwart.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd just like to reiterate kind of what Chris Bussard said. As individual supervisors and even as a county board, we're getting way down in the weeds in terms of the specifics here. And this is not our purview. So it's nice that everybody's, voicing concerns and stuff tonight, but it's not what our role is here. So sorry, privately, thank you.
And just to put a bow on this, I've been to several of these beer gardens at several other parks, and I will tell you, they've all been fantastic. Really well done, great music, great beers, and just have really brought a lot of people to the park. And I think that's probably a concern of the PRD. But in fact, that's what we're in the business to do. We want people enjoying our parks. We want them to come out there. And I know sometimes people in certain areas may have the idea that they don't want all that coming into their neighborhood, but that park is in their neighborhood. And I have two in mind, Sandy Knoll and Yar and all that. And I tell you, I just love them. They're awesome. And I'm glad. Usually these things are very well done. Jamie does know that I am on these things all the time. So with that, we will take a vote electronically. This is a majority vote to cast. So if you will go ahead. Okay, the vote is unanimous. Let's take a brief 5-minute recess. Use the facilities, make a phone call, whatever you need to do. Just stretch the legs. Thank you. Let's call back to order, please. All right, continuing on, Resolution 68, transfer from the general fund, additional funds for remodeling the county board meeting room. I will take a motion from Mr. Mahalik and Mr. Schleif. Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, we will vote on this electronically. This is a 2/3 vote, being as it deals with income money. So okay. And the resolution passes unanimously. Moving on. Resolution 69, resolution amending the 2022-2023 biannual budget appropriation to allow for the use of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds. I will seek a motion from Supervisor Bossert and second from Supervisor Mary. Any questions, comments, concerns? Supervisor Jeffrey Schleif.
Can I ask the county executive, what's the procedure here? Why wasn't this in the budget? We knew the money was coming. There must be an explanation.
It really has everything to do with the procedural approval process. It has less to do with the actual budget than it has to do with making sure that we have documented how it goes through committee. So for example, the dollars that were used from ARPA for the nursing staff over at Samaritan, that went to the Health and Human Services Committee, but we never actually documented how that procedure works. And by we, I mean you, through resolution. So we would have been adding 1.5 pages of verbiage onto a budget resolution, which also wouldn't have made sense. So this is really kind of cleanup language, more or less.
Thank you.
Seeing none, we will vote on this electronically. This is once again a 2/3 vote. The item passes unanimously. Okay, moving on. 2021 Resolution 71, opposition to COVID-19 vaccine mandates. I will take a motion by Supervisor William Smisek and a second by Supervisor Randy Markwart. Now we'll open up the floor to questions. Supervisor Timothy Mahalik.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that there's a distinction here. I know a number of you have been vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated, so is my family. There's a difference between anti-vax and anti-mandate. I am absolutely for as many people as choose to get the vaccine. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially to vulnerable groups. However, this is one of those classic lines of taking the Constitution seriously, of which we have all pledged to defend. I think it's constitutional to try and have a mandate forcing any type of vaccine. So I can tell you that I am pro-vax and anti-mandate. That is true for both the city and the county. I think it's unconscionable to try and force people to take a vaccine they don't want. I would hope that they would definitely consider getting the shot, but it is the individual's choice. We should be treating the adults in Washington County like responsible adults and not making those decisions for them. So I would support going against any mandate in the county that would force any type of a vaccine. Thank you.
Supervisor Carol Mary.
Thank you, sir. What I feel is the most tragic point in this exercise we are in tonight, expressing our opposition to the COVID-19 mandates, is the fact that we're even having this discussion. We are not qualified medical personnel. We are in no position to weigh the merits of receiving the COVID vaccination, whether or not it's the first round or the second with the booster. My wife and I have both been vaccinated, received our rabies shots, as I prefer to call them, because we want to travel, and this has become a necessary ritual for doing so. At the same point, we have other members of our family who have opted to not receive the vaccinations, either for themselves or their children. In making that decision, they recognize they are exercising their personal rights and deciding what they feel is best for them. The aim of these mandates is to take away those rights and impose gross and overreaching actions that Americans must obey. Well, this resolution calls into play the constitutionality of these mandates. This is a status for the courts to decide. And they seem to be doing that through a series of decisions striking down the mandates from the Biden administration. And that seems to be the biggest obstacle. These are orders that have come down from the executive branch of the government with no regard for the thoughts or opinions of Americans. Last year, the Wisconsin courts stated that Governor Evers' actions regarding overstepping his authority on COVID matters were capricious. I dare to say this wording will likely work its way into a federal court decision regarding the mandates. These mandates did not come down via the legislative process where the voices of Americans could be heard. In my mind, therein lay the problem. We have a government that is ignoring the opinions and wishes of tens of millions of Americans. Is it our role as a county board to become involved in such a resolution? Some would say we have no place in taking such actions. I disagree. Collectively, this body represents over 130,000 Wisconsin citizens. Of those thousands, only a handful will ever take the time to write to their senators or representatives in Congress, just as few will make direct contact with their state legislators. But we can speak on behalf of the vast majority of the citizens of Washington County. We are effectively signing these documents with over 130,000 signatures on it. Maybe that will get someone's attention. We oppose these mandates as a violation of personal liberties and the right for individuals to make their own healthcare decisions. The federal government be damned. And I support the passage of this resolution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Dice, can I put Jody Schulteis in front of you? Would that be permissible? She's on Zoom.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and thanks, Chris. I fully support this resolution as well, especially because as noted and stated in the resolution, Wisconsin hasn't joined the other 27 states in federal litigation. So I believe Washington County absolutely needs to lead the way for Wisconsin. And to me, this is really all about freedom, which the dictionary defines as the condition of not being controlled. And this is like a domino effect. We're watching our freedoms being taken away in an instant. Our medical freedoms are being taken away, and mandates prevail now. Especially concerning to me is the fact that the FDA really hasn't fully approved any one of the vaccines yet. Pfizer pulled a quick one between BioNTech and Pfizer, and it's disconcerting to know that they got away with deceiving the public. Our medical freedoms are linked to our social freedoms, and those are being taken away as well. And ultimately, that puts our economic freedom in jeopardy. So this fear complex that we are coming to live in and learn, it can be stopped by us, I believe. The voice of the people will triumph if we don't give up. We need to stand up and be very clear. And I am also, as Supervisor Mahalik said, I am not anti-vax. I am anti-mandate. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Schulteis. Okay. Supervisor Christine Dice.
Thank you. You know, there's always got to be somebody that takes the opposite view, so here goes. I always struggle with issues such as the one we are looking at this evening, whether it be to be for or against mandated COVID-19 vaccinations. I struggle because both positions seem to raise valid points. I struggle because I'm not an expert in the field of medicine. I struggle because the point put forward simply raises more questions for me, and I can't find all the answers. But this simple analysis has helped me reach my decision on mandated vaccines. Many say the COVID-19 vaccine is just too new to be mandated. But the approval standards set by the Food and Drug Administration, which gave the Pfizer shot full authorization after reviewing data from more than 40,000 people who participated in a clinical trial, are more stringent than what was in place in 1809 when the first state vaccine law was enacted in Massachusetts for smallpox. Vaccine mandates have been part of everyday life for Americans for more than a century, for the simple reason that they work in controlling or eradicating diseases. Thanks to widespread vaccination, the last natural outbreak of smallpox in the United States was in 1949. I was 2 years old and I have that shot to prove it. I found a very interesting bit of information from the Miami Herald editorial board I'd like to share. In 1777, George Washington's decision to mandate that Continental Army soldiers be inoculated against smallpox wasn't easy. There were no safe, widely tested vaccines like the ones used for the coronavirus today. And inoculation in the 18th century was controversial and risky. It required exposing healthy people to the smallpox virus by scratching it into their arm or having them inhale it through their nose, generally causing a mild infection that led to immunity, but also occasionally death. Washington wrote that if his army got widely infected, we should have more to dread from it than from the sword of the enemy. That was the first mass military inoculation, according to the Library of Congress. Since then, vaccine mandates inside and outside the military and opposition to them have been woven into the fabric of American life. In fact, we're living with vaccine mandates right now, and not just for COVID-19. In 1905, the US Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling in Jacobson versus Massachusetts, upholding a Cambridge City mandate. The court rejected the idea of an exemption based on personal choice because it would strip the legislative power from its function to, quote, care for the public health and the public safety, unquote. In 1922, the court denied a challenge to childhood vaccination requirements. More recently, the Arizona Court of Appeals rejected a challenge to a Maricopa County policy that excluded unvaccinated children from school when there is an unconfirmed but reasonable risk for the spread of measles. The liberty secured by the Constitution of the United States to every person within its jurisdiction does not import an absolute right in each person to be, at all times and in all circumstances, wholly freed from restraint. There are manifold restraints to which every person is necessarily subject for the common good. The court wrote that in the 1905 case. In other words, the Supreme Court said freedom doesn't give you the right to harm others. We have a vaccine to rid us of this virus, but until we can deal with the human interactions in a more constructive way, we're not going to get there. That's what's holding things up. It's not the scientific level, it's the social level. I know I'm probably in the minority, maybe a person of one to vote against this, but I wanted to share my thought process on this issue. And based on what I have just said, I cannot vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Christopher Bossert. Okay, so I chose to get vaccinated. I'm going to repeat the key words there. I chose. Now, at the time I made that choice, we were being told that there would never be a mandate to get vaccinated. We were being told that you would never need a booster shot. We were told that people who were fully vaccinated would not need to wear masks anymore. And we were told that the vaccine would stop the spread of COVID. Of course, all those things have turned out to be false. We're now learning that people who are vaccinated, while it reduces their own likelihood of hospitalization or death, are absolutely just as likely to spread COVID to others and to get COVID themselves. The vaccine does not affect the spread of the virus at all. In fact, our current numbers are twice what they were last year this time, with half our population being vaccinated. But Samaritan gets hit particularly hard by this. There's a shortage right now in the market of skilled nursing. Samaritan has experienced that. 21 months ago, when this virus started, we were calling all the workers of Samaritan heroes. And for 21 months, they've kept COVID out of Samaritan campus. And for roughly half that time, there was no vaccine available. It was their procedures, their safety procedures that kept COVID out of Samaritan campus, not a vaccine. But now, any of those workers who are choosing not to get vaccinated are being called zeros by some in the community, instead of being called heroes for the great work they've done in keeping this virus out of Samaritan. And I have a problem with that. And I have a problem with being put in a position where we're forced to fire good, hardworking heroes because they're worried about how this vaccine might affect their future fertility, or because they have a health condition that their doctor has said they shouldn't get vaccinated because of it. We have a universal mandate being handed down by somebody who's not a doctor, who hasn't performed any medical evaluations on anybody, who hasn't reviewed anybody's medical history. And the reality is, this mandate is being based out of fear. There's a segment of our population who 21 months later is still panicking about COVID. And they're looking for the silver bullet that's going to fix it. And now they're fixated on vaccines. And if a mandate actually went through and we got 99% of our population vaccinated, COVID would still be spreading just as quickly, and they'd be looking for the next silver bullet. It started out with lockdowns. Then it went to mask mandates, and that was the silver bullet that was going to fix it. Now vaccine mandates, what's the next mandate going to be? Thank you.
Supervisor Randy Markwart.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that have been said already. I'm not a scientist either. I've made a different choice than some of you probably, but frankly, that's none of your business. And none of anybody else's either. The practical effect of this, I know in the current news cycle, screaming headlines about how overwhelmed our hospital system has been. what you don't see reported is actual numbers. The fact is that just over a year ago, the hospitalizations due to COVID were almost 30% higher than they are today. And now we're being told they're, 2% of beds open because of COVID. Well, that practical result is that hospital systems have chosen to mandate a vaccine that doesn't necessarily stop the spread. And due to that, they're forcing out staff, they're closing down floors or wings of hospitals and reducing capacity and screaming the same headlines as they were a year ago with 30% more patients before we had a vaccine to basically now kowtow the population into doing what they want. And to the historic vaccine scenario that Supervisor Dice laid out, I don't believe we've had a respiratory virus eradicated through a vaccine in our history, and likely never will because of the nature of viruses. And I'll be supporting this resolution, even though it's essentially, symbolic, but I think it's a valid symbol to be stated. Thank you.
Supervisor Conrath, just before you speak, I'd like to give an opportunity to Supervisor Galatz, who is on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My concern is page 1, lines 35 through 38. Specifically 36, that County Board of Supervisors agree that the mandates are unconstitutional. Are any of us attorneys? Are we constitutional attorneys to make a statement this bold that we believe the mandates are unconstitutional? I can't. I don't know if any of you guys can. I don't have issues with some of the other whereases, but I can't believe any of us would say that we know for certain that the mandates are unconstitutional. I believe that's subject to the courts to make that determination and not the Washington County. So that's why I have issues with the way it's written. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Galatz. Back to Supervisor Conrath, and I would ask that you please keep your remarks somewhat brief because you have had lots of time tonight. So I would appreciate your brevity.
Yeah, I just happen to need to be involved in a lot of things right now, but not out of choice. Yeah, I'm speaking as a nurse. First, to thank you, Supervisor Bosser, for pointing out the healthcare providers at Samaritan and what they have lived through and the moral distress of all that. And that healthcare providers putting their lives at risk, without a vaccine, and the concerns of going home and spreading that to their loved ones. Also, I would like to, point out yes, just the research behind this. There are too many unknowns. And the opt-outs listed by the CDC are very limited. It is for anaphylaxis, and then it states religious exemptions. Well, the religious exemptions too the plan was for the Biden administration to decide one by one the religious exemptions, if they would be accepted or not. And those guidelines were going to come down through the Biden administration. I'm sorry, I don't approve of somebody else deciding an individual's right to a religious exemption or not, and whether their religious beliefs fit a religious exemption. That is not the place of government. And also just, healthcare decisions in general, they are normally done like another supervisor stated, between the provider and the patient. You are educated and you are informed about the risks and benefits. You review things as an individual based on your health history and your risks, and you make an informed decision. And that healthcare provider is not supposed to share what they would do in that type of situation and enforce their beliefs onto the patient. You educate and you inform, and then the patient makes the decision. And thus, I will be voting in favor of this mandate. But I would like to, sorry, a little caveat. I am a little concerned that this is just going to be fluff. And what if the Biden administration comes back and says, hey, if you don't have this certain percentage of individuals vaccinated, or you don't have a mandate in place, then we will not be, CMS patients will not be reimbursed. And so I do have some concern that this is just fluff and words and won't be put into action if things change.
Supervisor Pete Sorcy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to bring you down, but I have to say this. Last year at this time, I was 8 days from getting out of the hospital after spending, my wife and I, after spending 42 days. And anybody who's ever been in the hospital more than 3 days, I got the pain, but 42 days was a long time. This was before the vaccination. When we got out, we had to see our doctor right away, and he was coming out. And we asked her right away, should we or should we not get the shot? And she said yes. So it was our own decision, wasn't thrown up. We got the shot. We got the booster and we got the flu shot. From what I understand, you develop immunity over a period of time with COVID. Whether you do or not, I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, it was no picnic. It was not, I mean, I prayed every day to get out. It was very serious. But if you have it in your mind that you don't want to do it, you should be forced to do it. I chose to do it because my life was on the line. Thank you.
Josh, did you wish to speak? You're good. Okay. And I guess I'm going to be the last word on this one then. Just before this meeting, I was at my doctor, getting my truck driver physical, getting ready to renew my medical card. And we had a conversation about exactly this. And I've never really been an anti-vaxxer. I just chose not to take it until I spoke to my doctor. Just so happens my doctor is the medical director of Samaritan. So there's another little coincidental connection as Dr. Herdrich. And he gave me the reasons why he believes I should take the shot. And I'm going to follow his advice because I think it's the right decision for me. And this is the man I trust with all my health. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But that is my choice. And that is my choice with my doctor. Okay, I refuse to bow to a king and be told what will be put into my body. And while I appreciate some of the comments made by Ms. Dice, I do believe that the interpretation of harming others is a gross mischaracterization of just being of this shot and this mandate, because it's saying that just because you exist means you have COVID and you are potentially dangerous. I also have a knife. I could potentially stab you. Okay, so I therefore should be mandated to not have a knife. So it sounds a little crazy, but that's basically what they're equating, which is way outside the interpretation of what that law is. What it's saying is I can't go waving a gun around in a room. That makes sense. Okay, because that's very potentially dangerous. But just by the fact that you have no idea what my medical status is right now, so you can't determine whether or not I'm a threat to you in any way. And that's where I think that law, as it's written, is a gross mischaracterization of what this mandate is truly about. So I am totally for this. I do believe it is in our purview as leaders of our community to send this message, though it may be a BB on a battleship, it's still our BB and we're going to launch it. So I hope you will join me in that. Ms. Conrath? Really, really short.
Yeah, oh, this hasn't been spoken of yet. Sorry. It's just another reason why I was against the mandates with the opt-outs, they're limited to just anaphylaxis, religious, and then also natural immunity is not considered in the potential opt-outs for the mandate. And our government actually did a very large significant study that's not out there in the public, in mainstream media, sadly, where they utilized the natural immunity of people infected with COVID as the benchmark to compare the immunizations, and natural immunity was significantly longer and stronger protective than the immunizations. And thus it does concern me that individuals who have evidence of antibodies are not able to opt out. And thus another rationale why I would be voting against any mandates.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and vote on this electronically. It is a majority vote. The motion passes with 2 voting against. Moving on to our final resolution 72, grant application, tourism capital grant program, Silver Lining Amphitheater renovations and Glacier Hills Park cabin and campground improvements. This will be a majority vote. And I would like a motion on this. Motion Carol Mary and Jeffrey Schleif. Discussion. Seeing none, we will vote on this electronically. Oh, I'm sorry, Marcy, I missed you over there. Supervisor Marcella Bishop.
Thank you. I just have one question regarding how this grant, not that I'm against this grant, how this is being brought forward. It seems like this department, this is the second time, it says that this was presented to its committee the day before it was due. I'm assuming the fact that it's being brought before us, we were able to get our application in before it was due. But this is the second time that we've been late, so to speak. The first time we didn't get a grant, the snowmobile grant. And this time, I mean, it was last minute. Is there something going on over there that needs to be addressed?
No, on this one in particular, this is all ARPA related. So they're coming, grant opportunities are coming at us as fast as we can even consider them.
Okay.
The snowmobile grant opportunity, or the snowmobile grant situation, was a true mistake and an error on our part. This one is, we can't take them in fast enough. And we're actually even passing up grants that we probably should be applying for. We just don't have the resources.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this? All right, seeing none, we will vote on this electronically. This is a majority vote. This passes unanimously. Okay. Moving on, item 7, action regarding countywide library service agreement. Motion by Supervisor Mahalik, seconded by Supervisor Dice. And this one, we don't have discussion on, we're just. Okay. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, we will vote on this electronically. It ain't me. Did everybody vote? Okay. And this passes unanimously. Okay, so your homework assignment, next board meeting, remember, we are looking for donations for our employees to show our appreciation for the hard work that they do. And hopefully you can sign up for that. What's that? Remember to take your personal items out of your desk, empty them out, because we will not be meeting back here again. We'll be moving on. And this meeting will be, yes, Ms. Dice. I can't hear you. What? Oh, you can make them out to Don Creefall. The checks can be made out to Don Creefall if you bring a check. Okay, this meeting is closed, subject to the call of the chair.